Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. This is the channel where I paint my face, turn my camera on and talk about some books. I haven't done a series smash vlog in a really long time, and I think part of that is because I've spent all my time starting series but never getting any further than the first book because either the sequel isn't coming out for ages or there was something else that I wanted to pick up at that time. I figured it was about time I actually finished a series that I've started this year. So as you'll see from the title of this video, the series that I am looking to finish this weekend, or in this vlog, we'll see which one ends up happening because I've got a lot of filming to do this weekend, is the Scythe series by Neal Shusterman. Scythe by Neal Shusterman, which is in my bookshelf back there, is a book that was actually on my books that are going to self-destruct in 12 months list because I did not expect to like it. It had been sitting in my shelves since like the beginning of my Bookstagram channel, like 2 years ago, back when I did Bookstagram, and I just kept putting it off because whilst the whole concept really sounded interesting to me, the whole dystopia, beating death, all that sort of thing, there was just something about the book that didn't drive me to go and pick it up until one day I got it, I think in a monthly TBR or something, picked it up, read it, and actually loved it. I think I gave it like 4 or 5 stars, so of course now I'm super excited to actually finally be finishing the series. I read Scythe like months ago, and that is what I want to do in this vlog. So if you're not already aware what the series is about, Scythe is the first book in the Arc of a Scythe series by Neal Shusterman, and it's set in a world where humanity has defeated death. As a result, in order to sort of manage the population, a group of people called the Scythedom has been created, and they're responsible for maintaining the population by randomly selecting people to glean or kill. Then we meet Citra and Rowan, who are the 2 characters that we follow, and they are recruited by Scythe Faraday as apprentices, only to find out later on down the line that each Scythe is only supposed to have 1 apprentice, so these 2 must compete, I guess, during their apprenticeship until one of them has to glean the other at the very end. None of this is spoilers, by the way. All of this is like in the blurb. I really love the whole like dystopia utopia complex where like in a world where you're trying to create a utopia, you know, you're trying to make an ideal situation where you can't die, everyone's immortal, and then, you know, once you reach a desired age you can like restart and stay that age forever, and how that can turn into a dystopia because of the consequences of that, like population control. And I'm really excited to see how everything that happened in the first book, at the end of the first book, how the characters changed when their mentor kind of changed, how that's going to impact them going forward, because one of them definitely went down a more brutal path in the first book, or at the end of the first book. So I'm keen to see how that goes in this book, and this vlog is going to be me recording that experience. So let's get to reading. It is horrifically dark and gloomy in London today. So of course that's the day that I decided to go out with one of my friends and go out for lunch and get our nails done. So I have to brave the weather in a few minutes. But before I do, I thought I would quickly jump in and update you on how I'm going with Thunderhead. I am about, I can't see, 311 pages in, so just over halfway, but you know, 3/5 of the way through this book, and again, I'm still really enjoying it. It is a really speedy read. There is a lot of really questionable characters in this story, but anyway, a lot of this book revolves around a sort of threat of death against one of our favorite characters from the first book, or one of the main characters from the first book, or one of my favorite characters. So it definitely all kind of revolves around that and the different rebellion or rebel movements like at play in the world. It's definitely going more into the sort of anti-Scythe world in this book. So we're getting more time with the Tonists, we're getting more time with the Unsavories, who are basically people who completely go against everything that the Scythedom stands for. They're completely into like anarchy and just, you know, being a nuisance and those sorts of things. So we get to see a bit of an insight into their lives and how they're playing a role in the threat against one of the main characters' lives. So I'm really liking getting to understand the world a bit more than I did previously in the first book, because obviously that first book was really about building up Citra and Rowan and placing them a bit more. Something really creepy has just happened in Rowan's plotline, and it's really like, it's messing me up a little bit, and I'm intrigued to see how that's gonna play out. It's really weird, it's really creepy, and it's like really unhealthy of the person that's done it. Like, this person clearly has an obsession with what she's done and who she's done it to, and it's just, it's really weird. But anyway, I am enjoying this book so far. I am about halfway through. I'm just about to head out to go and get my nails done, so I'll have nice new nails when I get back from my next update, and hopefully I'll have finished it by the time I update you next, because I'm planning to at least finish this book this weekend, and then over the next couple of days, during my lunch break, after work, before work, that sort of thing, I will read the final book, The Toll, and be all finished before I head off to Scotland for my birthday. I'm just gonna keep reading until I have to head off in a few minutes, so I'll see you guys in my next update. So just got back from getting my nails done. This is what they're looking like. Very, very simple, easy little polish job. Just nice and like a, baby pink kind of accidental gradient kind of situation. So I'm really, really happy with them, loving them. As you can tell, slightly different background, different couch, different lighting, a little bit more yellow, because Ben and I have just moved into some temporary accommodation because the flat in our bathroom at the moment is getting completely redone. There was a crack in the bath, it was hell. Don't want to go into it, but basically we are moving into another place in a similar sort of area to stay here for a couple weeks while that all gets done. The landlord sorts that out, and then we can move into a completely newly renovated bathroom, which super excited for. Honestly, we've been showering in this bath shower situation that's got this massive crack in the tub for like months now, so very, very happy. As for the reading update, I haven't read any more of Thunderhead since I last spoke to you guys, so I'm just going to keep reading and just hopefully finish this book this evening. I've only got like about 200 pages left, so I reckon I can finish this evening. There's no TV in this temporary accommodation that we're in, so this is gonna be all I'm gonna be able to do, other than hang out with Ben, obviously. But yeah, this is really it. So I'm gonna get to reading. Hey, I'm back. You will have to excuse the somewhat disheveled appearance that I am putting out onto the internet today. I did not have time to do my makeup this morning. It has been a manic day from work, but I am finally done with work. I'm finally logging off, getting to, chill this evening, and I'm finally finished Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this, and man, I am so glad that I actually gave this whole series a chance after for the longest time thinking that I would never enjoy it. As to what I thought about this book, I mean, the characters expanded so much beyond just Rowan and Citra. We obviously got to meet a number of other people in the story, and I like how they sort of authentically gave me an insight into some of the other sort of movements at play, like the Tonists and the Unsavories, and the inner workings of academics who are working with the historical documents of all the past Scythes and who really have the knowledge about the history of this world, as well as obviously that extra insight on certain Scythes and the expansion of especially Citra and Rowan as they kind of took on these new personalities as the official and unofficial Scythes that they became. I found it really interesting how Citra kind of went through this back and forth identity crisis throughout this whole book. Like half the time she was calling herself Scythe Anastasia and half the time she was calling herself Citra, because she could never really figure out who she was supposed to be in which context, in which world, and it kept changing back and forth. So I really liked that. It was like she was sure in herself and her decision and her actions when she was around people, but then when she's in her own head, she really is doesn't know how to refer to herself. And then I mean, reading from the Thunderhead's perspective was so fascinating, because I mean, the entire time I thought it was going to be one of those Age of Ultron style things from Marvel, where the AI ends up going down the wrong path in the pursuit of creating the best world, but it ended up being the Thunderhead being used as a way to reflect on the actions that were being taken in the story, the events that were happening in the story. I just love the atmosphere of dystopian fiction generally, so of course this was going to do well in that regard for me. I just think it's so tense because the world is similar enough to our own in that you're constantly thinking, oh my god, this could happen to us, but different enough that it they're able to do something a bit fantastical and you don't kind of question it. The writing was great. I mean, the book was short chapters. It's split back and forth between the reflections from the Thunderhead and the sort of narrative style plot driven sort of thing, and it provided a nice break pretty frequently throughout the story, so I think that made the reading experience a lot more faster paced for me, which obviously kept my intrigue high. The plot was great. I mean, contextualizing again the story with those Thunderhead things really helped drive the story forward, and it stayed pretty fast paced, but not so fast paced that I felt lost, but just the right amount that there was always something going on that I was kind of tense, like sitting on the edge of my seat waiting to find out how that would turn out. And there were a lot of reveals that like I didn't see coming. Like they were so out of the blue, but not so out of the blue that like they didn't make sense, but you couldn't predict them. And that happened so many times in this book. And I mean, the way the book ended was completely jaw-dropping. I did not see that coming. It was so intense. It was very atmospheric. You could just see it happening. And it was kind of nice how it like has this symmetry with like the lost city of Atlantis and that sort of side of things. So I kind of liked that, but it was such a cliffhanger. So of course I immediately jumped right into the next book, which is The Toll. So I'm about 120 pages into this now. And again, I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely offering an interesting new perspective that the previous books didn't offer, which is like, what is life like without the reliance on the Thunderhead that everybody seems to have? And it's forcing people to do things manually, do things themselves. And it's interesting, we're getting these perspectives of characters where they're complaining about how they have to do everything themselves. And it just shows you that in that kind of situation where you begin to rely so heavily on technology that you can lose skills and lose abilities to do things on your own, lose brain power almost, for like problem solving and figuring out how to work things out yourself. So I really like that. There's been a big reveal which has just happened. I mean, it's 120 pages and it happened about 100 pages, and it happened a lot sooner than I expected it to. So of course I'm loving that and watching that play out, because obviously there's a half of it that I think is going to play out well, and there's a half of it that I'm like, oh my god, that character is going to die. Like there's nothing that can save them. So I'm intrigued to see how that kind of turns out. I also only just noticed that like there's a face here, but then there's a face on each other side of the scythe as well, which I thought was really cool. So it's interesting how it's like you've got like the scythe and then like the human version of themselves like always in the back of their mind, which is like their conscience. And I think that's a really cool cover decision, just as a side note. But anyway, 120 pages into this, really enjoying it. The weather in London at the moment is so back and forth. I mean, it was pissing it down when I started this clip, and now all of a sudden it's sunshiny skies and not a cloud in sight. So what the hell is going on in the UK? I am about to go to Scotland at the end of this week, so I'm terrified for what that means in terms of the weather there. Like it's gonna be rain the entire time, and the only waterproof shoes I have are my big like hiking boots, and they give me mad blisters. So I kind of have to just deal with wet feet or blisters. So I guess you'll see which one I end up picking. As you can see, I'm in this temporary accommodation, so my background's a little bit different, and I just got a notification that the sequel to Legend Born, Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, has arrived at the post room of my flat. So I'm probably going to go and pick that up tomorrow when I go and grab my suitcase for Scotland. So I'm super excited that that's come. I'm probably gonna read that immediately. I'm amazed that like it's publication day today, I'm pretty sure, and I've already got the book. I'm amazed by how quickly that has come. So you know what? I don't love using Amazon to buy books, but when it's a release that I'm really anticipating, sometimes it works. I know if I used Waterstones right now, it wouldn't arrive for like 6 weeks, and I'm just not about that waiting time. I do not have the patience for a book that I'm actually really keen for. That is my reading update. I'm going to log off now and do a bit more reading and hopefully get a ton of The Toll read tonight, because I really want to finish this vlog before I go to Scotland, and I need to edit this before I go as well, because this goes up next week and I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to do that. So we'll see. So I'll see you in a bit. may notice that I've got a little bit of extra bling on my finger, and that is because my amazing, beautiful, incredible boyfriend Ben proposed to me while we were in Scotland with this beautiful, beautiful, incredible ring that I actually found out is the same stone as my grand's ring, which I think is really, really, really nice. So yeah, he took me up to Edinburgh Castle, which is the one place that I really, really wanted to go because I'm like obsessed with Mary Queen of Scots and Scottish sort of royal history and everything like that. So I would always wanted to go to the castle, and so he took me up there and we found sort of like a quiet spot, and he got down on one knee and he proposed, and it was super, super romantic and sweet and cute and everything that I wanted it to be, everything that I could possibly dream of. And of course I said yes. So I am so excited to be back in London and finally getting to celebrate all of this with my family and friends, and that is what we're going to be doing for the next couple of days. But on the book side of things, while I was in Scotland and just after I got back, I finished The Toll by Neil Shusterman, but I actually left it back at the flat because we had to go back to the flat that we live in to pick up more clothes to bring to the temporary accommodation. So I accidentally left The Toll there, so I'm going to put a picture of it up here so that you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I finished this book right as we got back to London, and I really, really enjoyed it, but it did only get 3.5 stars because for me it was a somewhat lackluster and confusing ending to a series that I had really, really gotten into. I feel like the ending was kind of a bit of a cop-out in my mind. I was a little bit irritated by it, but anyway, into what I actually thought about the book. Of course, I use Corpile to do my ratings, as I always do. So on the character side of things, I mean, the book expanded more than I could have possibly imagined. There were so many more characters, so many more like movements that you were following. It was movements within movements. So you had the Tolls, and then within that you had Sibilants, who were like extremist Tolls. And then there were characters that you get a POV of them really, really early in the story, and you wouldn't 100% understand how they would play into the larger story until chapters and chapters later, you'd get another POV for them where you realize just how much of an important role they play in the sort of movement of the plot, which I really, really liked. I thought it was fascinating how when the Thunderhead was sort of removed from everybody's lives, one, how they all were forced to realize just how reliant on the Thunderhead everybody was, and two, how everybody in the story kind of moved towards some other higher power or some other like godlike being in order to look after them, because they just needed that security of knowing that something was watching out for them. So whether they moved to the Toll or they moved to the Scythes, everybody sort of gravitated towards something that would then give them a bit of security and comfort, which I thought was a really, really interesting sort of comment on humanity in general, how we have this need to feel like there's something else out there that's looking out for us. One thing that I was slightly irritated by in the plot of the story was how it was kind of told in two different timelines, but not in a really, really clear way. So you had Citra and Rowan making a reappearance at the very, very beginning of the story in a sort of timeline that was 3 years on from when the events of the end of the second book took place, but then you kind of would go back and forth in time to find out what happened in everybody else's lives in the lead up to the discovery about Citra and Rowan. But it wouldn't be clearly signposted. So what I think would have been better, or at least in my opinion would have been less confusing for me, would be to just really build up that anticipation of finding out what happened between Citra and Rowan, and not have them appear in any way in any of like the first half of the book until their timeline had kind of caught up with the rest of the book. And it just, the way it was written was kind of confusing to me. So like, I didn't know if the things that were happening in the story were happening 3 years in the future where Citra and Rowan were around, or in the lead up to that 3-year point when they woke up. Another thing that sort of massively impacted my enjoyment was the overall ending of how they were going to solve the whole situation. There were sort of two endings to this whole situation. One of which would be like completely removing the Scythes from their positions of power and having something that is literally objective, going and doing their job, which I think was a great ending. I think that is definitely what should have happened. But then there was a second ending of this sort of space race side of things, and I'm trying not to go into too much detail about it, but I think it was really a massive cop-out to sort of keep the characters you know and love alive, and then potentially as like an opening for a new series or a spin-off or something something from this. Unfortunately, this book did only get 3.5 stars. The characters were amazing and I really loved how they developed through the story, but the whole plot around the chronological order of the storytelling and then that sort of final solution thing just was a bit weird for me, so it did impact my overall rating. But yeah, that is the end of this series smash video. I obviously didn't go into as much detail as I usually would with the Toll as I did with Thunderhead, but I was in Scotland and I got engaged and I got distracted. So naturally that kind of impacted this a little bit. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Do come and let me know in the comments down below if you've read this series, if you think there's something sort of about that space race element that you think I'm missing or potentially not considered, or if there's a series that you're reading at the moment where you're hoping to really smash it out over the next couple of weeks before the end of the year. Come and let me know what all those sorts of things are in the comments down below. I love talking to you guys and I do my best to reply to every single comment. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do let me know by liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell all down below. It is a super easy way to help my channel grow, and I will see you lovely people in my next video. Bye!